Okay, it's 7:30, so good evening and welcome members, officers and member of the public to the meeting of the Rochford District Council Planning Development Committee on the 20th of July 2023. There are no planned fire drills, so if the alarm goes off, please leave the building in an orderly fashion through the nearest fire exit. Please use either the fire exit through the main doors of the hall or the fire exit in the storeroom adjacent to the stage. The fire assembly point is in the island in front of the main entrance to the building. Please do not delay your evacuation to collect any belongings. Please do not return to the building until given permission to do so by council staff. Please note that the meeting will be live streamed. Please switch off mobiles or turn them to silent. And please note that toilet and hand washing facilities are in the foyer area. Members, your voice will only be captured on the live stream when your microphone is switched on. So please remember to switch on your microphone when you are invited to speak and switch off again when not speaking. Members, voting will be done on a show of hands in line with the Constitution. I will ask for a show of hands for and then against recommendations, and will also ask for a show of hands for those wishing to abstain from voting. Agenda items 1 and 2, apologies for absence substitutes. We have apologies from Councillor Ward. Councillor Foster is substituting. Agenda item 3, non-members attending. Councillor Gadsden, welcome. Agenda item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of June 2023. Are the minutes agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 5, to receive declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interests, please, members?
Thank you, Chairman. Non-pecuniary interest in the land east of Ashington Road discussion as a ward councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor Andy.
Parish Councillor, Rochford Parish.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw.
And the same as Councillor Ian Foster, item 6. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no others, so I'll take that as complete. Agenda item 6, 223/0033/full, land east of Ashington Road and north of Rochford Garden Way. I was going to say, if there were any members of the public here, that obviously this is not something where we're looking to change the permission that has been given to build on the site. This is just a technical matter that goes along with the building out of the site. Members, there is additional information on the addendum relating to this application. Katie Rogers will present. Oh, sorry, Councillor Shaw.
Just one point, Chairman. On the first page, it says secondary success onto Percy Cottage Road. I think that should be access. Thank you.
Okay, that's noted, thank you. So with that, I'll hand over to Katie Rogers, who will present the officer's report. Thank you.
Thank you. You can hear me, yeah. So this application relates to the land edged red on the plan on the screen. And for the benefit of those who find the red line difficult to see, I'll just go round it. The site largely comprises a former agricultural field with the western boundary running down the rear gardens of existing properties on Ashington Road. The northern boundary runs adjacent the rear garden of boundaries on Oxford Road, and the southern boundary runs alongside existing property boundaries on Rochford Garden Way, Percy Cottage Road, and then a small section of the drive in the southeastern corner. So the site benefits from planning permission granted on appeal last year, and the planning consent was a hybrid consent with full planning permission granted in relation to phase 1, and outline planning permission with all matters reserved apart from access and layout relating to phases 2 and 3. The plan on screen shows the proposed phasing plan, the approved phasing plan, with phase 1 areas of the site coloured this pinky sort of salmon colour. So this area here, this slither here, these bits here, and this part over to this side. So the phase 1 area included this residential parcel in the southwestern corner, but also, so this east-west ditch, this what we call the central northern green space, and the eastern parkland was also in phase 1, where full planning permission was granted. They relate to strategic landscaped areas at the site. No changes proposed to the approved scheme relating to this phase 1 residential parcel. The proposed changes tonight relate to the layout of development within phase 2, so the green area, within phase 3, the blue area, and also some changes to the phase 1 in respect of the strategic green spaces, particularly this central northern green space here. So the plan on screen now is the proposed layout plan, which shows the phases 2 and 3. So phase 2 is this area south of the east-west ditch. Phase 3 is this area, this parcel here and this bit here, north of the east-west ditch. It also shows these strategic green spaces, this central northern green space here, the east-west ditch and the eastern parkland here. So this layout plan proposes changes compared to the approved layout of phases 2 and 3, and these changes are summarised on pages 6.23 and 6.24 of the committee report. And I'm going to take you through some plan extracts to compare the approved to the proposed. So the extracts I'm going to show, are areas within this plan here. So the plan extracts here show a comparison of the approved layout in the northwest corner of the site. And the plan on the left-hand side here is an extract of the approved layout, and the plan on the right-hand side is an extract of the proposed layout. The corner of the site borders existing properties on Ashington Road here to the west and Oxford Road here to the north. So the plan, you'll note that the road layout is proposed to change. As approved, a turning head was provided at the south end after the road bent round to the south in this part here. The road layout is now proposed to include a T-junction at the end of that street here. And as a result of the change to the turning head, the layout of dwellings where the turning head had been sited is now proposed to change, so in this area here. So where there had been a semi-detached pair of properties, there is now a detached house and a semi-detached pair. So there was pairs of semis here, and this is changed to a pair of semis, 2 pairs of semi-detached houses and a detached property on the end. You'll note that in terms of the siting of the dwellings along the northern, so this area here, and the western edges in this part of the site, very little change is proposed compared to the approved scheme. The proposal is still showing 2 terraces, so approved 2 terraces and a semi-detached pair here. And on the proposed layout, you still have that arrangement with the proposed terraces and the semi-detached pair in the middle. The 2 maisonette blocks here and here are still proposed, but the orientation of this block, which was at 90 degrees, is now in line. So there's a minor change there. In the bottom left-hand corner of this plan extract, there was a detached house. If you can see my cursor on the left-hand side here at the bottom, that was a detached house whose side elevation ran parallel in close proximity to the rear garden of that existing property on Ashington Road. And if you see on the right-hand side now, you've got a semi-detached pair orientated at a different angle to that rear garden boundary with a slightly greater degree of separation. As set out in the committee report, where changes are proposed to the siting of proposed houses adjacent to the site boundaries, it is considered that the proposed layout would be equally acceptable in terms of impact on residential amenity of existing neighbouring residential properties. Some of the dwelling types are also proposed to change. I've already mentioned a few on this plan extract. You'll note that where 2 detached properties were proposed here, so my cursor's on the left-hand plan, we've now got an additional pair of semi-detached properties there. And there are other instances across the wider phase 2-3 layout where similar changes to the dwelling type to be provided and changes to the plot shape or size for individual dwellings is now proposed. So this is the second plan extract I've got for you. So these images show again the approved layout on the left-hand side of the screen and the proposed layout on the right-hand side of the screen. And these properties, in both cases, we've just moved slightly east from the previous extract I show you. We're still on the northern boundary of the site, so this borders properties on Oxford Road to the north. So the approved layout proposed 2 areas of green space here, bisected by a road running east-west approximately. And the proposed amended layout still proposes 2 areas of green space, but the northern area, so this part here, is now proposed to be slightly larger than was approved, and the southern area is proposed to have a different shape, wider but less deep. The 2 green spaces would still be bisected by a road, but the road would change in form and now would consist of this S-bend. The layout of the proposed dwellings in the area, particularly, so this was approved, this area to the east of the northern green space, is proposed to change. So the approved layout featured 2 flatted blocks, here and here, 2 rows of terraced houses, here and here just to the north, and then there was a little sort of maisonette flatted block attached to one of these terraces to the left-hand side. So now we have a flatted block proposed on this corner, this little cluster of maisonette properties, they're 2-storey, and then we have this U-shaped cluster of maisonettes in the northern part of that section. A shared surface street is now proposed between the 2, and this would lead to this kind of central northern green space. A new flatted block is also proposed on this corner here, west of the northern green space, whereas you'll note on the approved scheme, we had a different arrangement of dwellings proposed there. The central northern green space would continue to function as a public amenity space with mown paths throughout. So you can see the mown paths, a slightly different arrangement. And the hard surface paths would also be provided. So if you can see my cursor on the right-hand side, a hard surface path would run up here along the northern boundary, linking to that shared surface street here. And then this path would also run down this side and link to the footway along the S-bend in the road. The northern part of the green space would continue to function as part of the flood alleviation scheme at the site, capturing surface water, falling onto the site during rainfall events and transferring it to the ditch, which will run along the western edge. That was the same as the proposal in this scheme. And then the water will be transferred to the ditch that runs east-west and then eventually outfalling off-site via the public sewer. These 2 plan extracts show the ditch, which runs across the site east to west. The approved plan extract is at the top of the screen, and the proposed amended site layout plan extract is to the bottom of the screen. And you'll note that 3 yellow arrows are shown. So on that northern plan, you've got one here, here, and here. And then again, on the proposed, you've got one here, here, and here. These indicate that 3 pedestrian crossings of the ditch remain proposed. And on the approved layout, a footpath was to be provided all the way along the east-west ditch, but as approved, part of that footpath was on the southern boundary of that ditch, whereas this section to the west and this section to the east were on the north. And one of the changes proposed is now that that footway runs consistently along the northern part of that east-west ditch. The east-west ditch would remain tree-lined and housing to be provided along the ditch, characterised still by a mix of detached and semi-detached properties. These two plan extracts show a section of the northeastern corner of the site, bordering the rear gardens of existing properties on Oxford Road again. So this is the far eastern corner of Oxford Road. Again, the left-hand plan extract is a section of the approved layout here, and the right-hand side is the proposed. Dwellings would continue to be sited fronting onto the eastern parkland, so this in this area here, that was approved. This is proposed. And these would all continue to be detached. These form part of what was known as the Green Fringe character area, and changes have been made to further enhance the distinctiveness of this part of the site. Some of the dwellings have been given deeper front gardens, so these ones here, compared to what had been approved, and some of them have been orientated at slight angles to one another. The road in this section of the site has also changed, so this is now proposed as a shared surface street compared to what was approved. On these plan extracts, you'll also note that the positions of some of the red dots, hopefully you can see those, if you can see the red dots here on the approved plan and on these properties here, and that maisonette pair on that corner here. These denote affordable housing, and some of these have changed. Whilst some changes are proposed in terms of which plots will be provided as affordable housing compared to the approved, across the site, the affordable housing would still continue to be provided in approximately the same location. So what we still get is clusters of affordable dotted across the wider site as a whole. You'll note that no changes proposed to these affordable houses here. So on the approved layout, we had these two pairs of semi-detached, and again, you've still got those proposed. So it's certainly not the case that all the affordable housing is proposing to change in terms of the location of them. So this final plan extract comparison shows a section of the southern boundary of the site. So now we've got rear gardens of existing properties on Rochford Garden Way to the south. The layout and siting of dwellings proposed here is very similar to the layout as approved. And again, this approved layout is on the left-hand side of the screen and the proposed on the right. However, the street to run parallel to the southern boundary, to this one here, is now proposed again as a shared surface street. And some changes are proposed to the siting and dwelling types proposed, which would face this attenuation basin here to the east. So we had 3 detached properties and then a detached property to the south here. And now we've got a sort of mix of semi-detached and detached properties, but still fronting onto this kind of open space, attenuation basin to the east. So I just take you back to the proposed layout as a whole. So there's extracts from this proposed layout, and across the site as a whole, car parking provision is proposed which would meet the council's adopted parking standard. It is considered that the proposed revised layout would be equally acceptable in terms of design, with some additional benefits included in the layout now. For example, the extension of the cycle route. So there was included within the original scheme areas of pavement essentially that are wider to allow for a designated cycle path alongside a footway, and there's just an additional section of that now built into the layout, and that's where my cursor is here in the sort of southeastern corner. In terms of the mix of 1, 2, 3 and 4 bed affordable houses to be provided in phases 2 and 3, this would remain almost exactly the same as the approved scheme, save for the fact that 2 fewer 2 bed affordable houses and 2 more 3 bed affordable homes would now be proposed. This is set out in the table in the committee report at page 6.46. In total, 148 affordable homes would continue to be provided as per the approved scheme in terms of number across phases 2 and 3. The proposed changes, again, we consider to be equally acceptable in terms of design, including changes to the road layout and road type. And the recommendation, therefore, Chairman, is one of approval, subject to the recommended conditions as set out in the committee report and as reported on the addendum.
Thank you, Katie. There is one public speaker on this item, Mr. Anas Makda, planning agent. Mr. Akhtar, please take your place at the microphone. You have 5 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Anas Makda. I am the planning agent for this application, acting on behalf of Bloor Homes. This is a planning application that seeks to amend an approved layout. The scope of this application is to consider the layout changes that are proposed only, as the Chair noted at the top of this meeting. The principle of the development is not open for consideration, as the site continues to benefit from planning permission for new homes. Your officer's report and the presentation today provides a clear accounting of the changes that are proposed and provides a thorough assessment of the acceptability of those changes. Changes which have been agreed where necessary in consultation with relevant statutory consultees. The amended scheme that is before you today provides a package of improvements that enhances the quality of the site. The amended layout has been designed to improve the setting and street scene of the homes, the distinction and legibility of the character areas, connectivity and permeability through the site, as well as provide a greater area of and better designed public open space. These amendments have all been designed in close liaison with your officers, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank your officers for their cooperation and collaboration throughout what has been a hugely involved application process. The positive nature of the proposed amendments is exemplified by the Urban Design Officer's consultation comments, which highlight the layout improvements that will be achieved as a result of the amendments proposed by this application. Members, I will keep this brief as your officer has clearly confirmed in detail that there are no technical objections to the amendments which are proposed. The application complies with local and national planning policy, as well as the guidance that is relevant to this type of application. I therefore respectfully request that you accept your officer's recommendation for approval and approve this planning application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Magda. Please return to your seat. Members, please, will allow everyone the opportunity to speak. However, I will limit, if necessary, your speaking to 5 minutes. Are there any visiting members who would like to speak? No? So ward councillors first. Ward councillors, would you like to comment?
I haven't got anything, Chair.
Okay, councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I've got some observations and questions, if I may. First of all, on page 6.13.31, we talked about contamination. Would the contamination definition include Japanese knotweed, which Bloor has agreed to arrange a further review of the perimeter of the site after resident concerns were raised? We discussed that at a meeting of the site a couple of weeks ago. According to the report, it also says development would be halted if contamination is found. So my question is that correct? And would knotweed count in that assessment of contamination? On pages 6.16 and 6.17.46, this is an observation rather than a question. It says in there, the reason for the actions in the CEMP is described as to ensure the environmental impact of the construction of the development is adequately mitigated and in the interest of the amenity of nearby residents and occupiers. I have to say, based on observations of recent months, that residents would find it any claim compliance with points 46A, B, D, E, J, and M to be laughable, frankly. And that's just a comment, not a question. On page 6.19.6C, could it be confirmed that the widening of the junction works, the completion of the new lane, right turn lane, and the surface works at the entry to the site will be completed by the end of the Holt Farm School's summer holidays? Originally, people may recall that those works were proposed at the very start, but for reasons which I think people understand, they got delayed. On pages 6.23, 6.24, which relate to phases 2 and 3, as we've heard, 1.3 on phase 2 talks about amendments to location and mix, brackets, bed numbers, of affordable homes. So the question is, does this increase or decrease the number of bed spaces in the affordable homes? On 6.23, point 1.3, reference phase 3, it mentions an additional flatted block. So my question is this increasing the number of total homes in the whole development beyond the 662 that are approved? That may have already been mentioned, I'm not sure. It also makes the same comment about phase 3 is about the amendment to location and mix brackets bed numbers of affordable units. So my same question as phase 2 is does this increase or decrease the number of affordable bed spaces? On page 6.35, 2.69 describes a mix of apartment blocks and masonettes, which in 2.7 on page 6.35 includes a new apartment block. My question is, again, it's a repeat in a sense, do these changes increase the total number in the development beyond the 662 approved? On page 6.39, item 2.85 to 2.88, it makes changes which amend some plots from being compliant with guidance on distance from existing property to making it less than Essex Design Guide. Why? Why should that be acceptable? On page 6.40, points 2.88, 2.89 and 290, it mentions all moving houses closer to existing houses. And again, the question is why? On page 641, point 2.96, it says, I quote, residential buildings would largely be capable of accommodating the minimum amenity space. Is that acceptable? Largely means not all, I think, being capable of accommodating the minimum amenity space. So is that acceptable? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Katie, would you like to come back on those?
Yes, thank you. Right, I don't know what order to go in. We'll go reverse order, I think. So in terms of the last point raised, garden area compliance with your policy. So in paragraph 2.97 of page 6.41, it does note that one plot is some 5.4 metres squared below the 100 square metres that would be required for that particular plot. But because of its proximity to areas of green space to be provided within the site, we say that actually does comply with the council's supplementary planning guidance, because that supplementary planning guidance does quote the 100 square metre figure, but says to be taken into account of the siting of the property in its relation to areas of public open green space. So that's our view as to why that makes this proposed scheme revision acceptable.
Sorry, if I may, just so you're saying largely, it means everything except one?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
662 dwellings, I can confirm that that is the number proposed as was approved, so there's no change there. In terms of your point in relation to compliance distances with neighbouring properties, I think you referred to paragraph 2.88. Sorry, I didn't get what page number that's on. But if I'll take you to this plan extract again.
Oh, 6.39.
6.39, thank you. Sorry, not that one. Central Northern Green Space. Okay, so what we are referring to here is if I can take you to this area of the site here. So you can see there was an arrangement of properties here with existing properties on Oxford Road to the north. And now we have an arrangement where we've got some maisonettes and that relationship with the existing boundary of properties on Oxford Road to the north. So we have to take into consideration, and bear in mind, we are just assessing access and layout. So in terms of layout, it's the positioning of dwellings. What we don't have at this stage is the elevations, because that speaks to the appearance of dwellings, which will be considered in a later reserve matters application. But in relation to the layout, what the Essex Design Guide has within it is a distance of 35 metres, where you have a flat proposed rearward of an existing dwelling. Now, the existing dwelling is just off plan here, but it's approximately where my cursor is. And some of these dwellings on Oxford Road have been extended, okay? So that makes that distance between this elevation of the property proposed and the rearmost elevation of that property on the existing dwelling narrowed compared to what it was when it was originally built. So we've taken into account the fact that some of these have been extended. And in one case, in relation to this property proposed here, that distance doesn't quite meet the 35 metres, okay? And that distance is about ensuring rear privacy from new development. But what we're comfortable with is that distance is not so short that it's seriously unreasonable. So we're talking about a few metres under that 35 metre reference in the supplementary planning guidance. And what we are able to do when a reserve matters application comes before us is ensure that the window openings at first floor, and we're really concerned in a flat about main living spaces, so kitchens, lounges, where you'd probably spend quite a lot of time and outlook quite a lot, would need to be in this elevation facing south. Okay, and that's within our control. It's within your gift as members determining any future reserve matters application. So we've looked carefully at the relationship here, but we're satisfied that this layout, subject to detailed consideration of the actual three-dimensional building that's going to be put there and the positioning of windows, will be an acceptable relationship. So that deals with that point there. In terms of the number of bed spaces in affordable dwellings, so there is slight change to the affordable mix that's proposed in relation to phases both. I'll go back to the proposed. So in relation to both phases 2, which is this residential area south of the ditch, and phase 3 north, there are slight changes in the affordable mix in terms of 1, 2, 3 bed properties compared to what was approved in those areas. So in relation to phase 2, we're talking about 1 fewer 1 bed affordable and 1 more 2 bed. So I think we're getting 1 more bed space, right? And then in relation to phase 3, it's 1 more 1 bed, 3 less 2 bed, and 2 more 3 bed, which I think might equal out. If it doesn't equal out, we're very nearly there. So in terms of the overall bed spaces of affordable dwellings, we're okay. We also have a consultation response back from our strategic housing team, and they've got no objection. That's on the addendum to the mix of affordable that are now proposed. The additional flatted block, well, actually, there are still 2 flatted blocks proposed in phase 3 in terms of 3-storey flatted, purpose-built flatted blocks. There are other flats in maisonette blocks. So there was a couple of, this is very small scale, isn't it? Maybe I could just zoom in slightly. So I think what it's really referring to is that we have this new, I suppose, flatted block here that wasn't on the layout for phase 3 here. But on the phase 3 layout for the approved scheme, we actually had 2 purpose-built flatted blocks here. So actually there is no change fundamentally in the number of buildings which will be 3-storey purpose-built flatted blocks across the site as a whole. And then I think going to the other points raised initially in your sort of matters of concern relating to the completion of the Holt Farm, the entrance to the site in relation to Holt Farm School kind of opening summer holidays, the construction environmental management plan and potential concerns of existing from neighbouring residents in terms of, like, I think the dust, those sorts of matters, and the knotweed are not matters that we can take into account in the consideration of the acceptability of the scheme before you tonight, but they are certainly matters we can just confirm whether compliance is being achieved in relation to those conditions acceptably outside the meeting, and any that we need to investigate further, we can do so.
Thank you, Katie. Councillor Constable.
Thank you. I'm a little bit concerned about the change in the roads from a road with a pavement to a shared space. Is that really necessary to do that? And if that is the case, is there any provision going in for a speed restriction within those roads? Because quite often you get new estates like this, you've got young lads on there with cars, we've all been there, and I can see an accident waiting to happen. So I'm not very happy about the change of the road from a road with a pavement to a shared space. Can you address those questions,
I can
please?
try and help. So if I just take you over to, there's two particularly. Let's just go in this north corner first. So we already, in phase one, which is the sort of greyed out area, have shared surface streets. So they're not uncommon. They're not uncommon at this site as approved, and they are features of other sites or our other strategic housing land allocation sites across the district. There are limits to the extent that a shared surface street can be provided at, so it can't serve exceeded number of dwellings. It also, here, this is where the shared surface street is. This is meant to be kind of like the rural edge, if you like, the green fringe. And this shared surface street will be designed to, the way it's surfaced is designed to kind of reduce vehicle speeds. There will be a raised platform here up to it. I don't know if you can just see it's quite small there. I could zoom in if you want me to. But there are features like that designed in to ensure that kind of vehicle speeds are kept to a reduced speed. And the number of dwellings this will serve, County Highways are happy that this will meet their standards. It's not a through road, so that also is kind of a measure that would hopefully reduce speeds in that area. You know, it just serves a few dwellings and there's no prospect of, you know, venturing south and then swinging back round to Oxford Road and things like that. The same applies to this area here where the shared surface would be in this southern corner here. So certainly shared surface streets do not function on the main through roads through the site. Just zoom out a bit. What you've got is a main looping, kind of got like, as you come into the site here and up here through this main loop road, this is not a shared surface, you know. So the kind of main streets, highways require to be up to the adoptable standard with footways to the minimum either side. But in small areas where you get these cul-de-sac arrangements, as long as they don't serve too many properties, our highways are happy, and they are generally a feature that of sites that we don't object to.
So it wouldn't be necessary then to put a speed limit on it? You think that would be taken care of by the road surface?
I think there will be speed limit restrictions on the site, but I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly what that would be. I think that would be for the Highways Authority to kind of determine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw.
Thank you. Just one point for Katie, please. You said to Councillor Foster you were going to ask about the entrance in and out and the work. Could you come back to the ward councillors when you get an answer, please? Thank you.
Yeah.
So it's only because residents will ask us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Efty.
Thank you, Chairman. Got 3 clarifications and 2.5 questions. I'll start with the clarification. 6.20, 13 financial contribution of 50,000 to Essex County Council towards provision of pedestrian crossing in Braes Lane. It doesn't say, it usually says how many houses have got to be built before they give that, or how many, when would that be given to for the, she's looking for her paperwork. While she's doing that, next one, 14, community lands be offered to healthcare provider. And it says on there, if the land is not transferred in relation to construction of a healthcare facility, it's released from the transfer obligation. What actually does that mean? And 22, I sort of remember going back a good year or so ago that there was going to be some spaces, but whereabouts will there be for this school? Because there was confusion about that. And if the clarification, sorry, the questions. I know you've gone through and counted all the houses and the parking spaces, but is there actually any loss of parking spaces throughout with the change of plans? And I was a little bit concerned, as with Councillor Constable, about the shared streets with pedestrians, cars and scooters, with the speed, if there's going to be a speed limit or something on there, but you've sort of answered that question, so that was a half question. And does the boundary gap around the outside of the site, is that going to be constant between the back gardens and the actual site, red line? Green buffer. And they're my 2.5 questions and 3 clarifications.
Councillor Wilson.
Sorry, I was just indicating that I'd like to ask questions afterwards.
Okay. Katie?
Fine, thanks. I'll deal with these ones first, if that's okay. I'm just trying to find, I do have a... I do have a schedule, but what I can't confirm, and I don't want to tell you wrong, is the £50,000 towards the pedestrian crossing on Braes Lane. There will be a time at which point that needs to be provided, but I can get back to you if that's okay, because it doesn't, I don't think, influence your decision making tonight in relation to the acceptability of this proposal. And I don't want to tell you the wrong thing tonight, so I will get back to you on that to tell you when that needs to be paid.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll just look at the section 106 again. You also referenced the land for the healthcare facility, and I think what you're referring to is the backstop that's written into the section 106 agreement. So what can't happen is that land designated for a specific purpose and being offered to an NHS provider or other, that offer can't be indefinite, if you like. So whenever legal agreements are formulated, there has to be a certain point at which that maybe that NHS provider confirms that they do not want that land. Okay.
I'll just come back on that.
Yeah.
I do know with Essex County councillors and trying to get a health provider to actually use 106 money, it usually takes a lot longer than 2 years for them to actually make any decisions. So I think 2 years is a very short space of time for that. I think that they would run out of time on that.
So what we can't do tonight, I don't think, because this application is just seeking to amend elements of the approved layout. But what we could do is take that comment away, and maybe the council can work to try to push the NHS to cover that. That's, I suppose, that is outside of the decision making that's relevant to this decision tonight. But we could take that away.
Hence, it's a clarification.
Yeah. And then the school places, maybe I can just point that out. Let me just zoom in a little bit. So this is also part of the schedule of the Section 106 agreement that relates to the site, and no changes proposed to that at all. So here, you can see here, we've got Ashenden Road and the entrance to the site here. We've got the community building indicated on that corner there. Got spaces here for potential use in relation to that community building. And it's this area greyed out here. So it's part of phase 1, okay? And there's another footpath link through, this is just a footpath link, I think emergency vehicle access actually as well in this area here through Ashenden Road, but it's this area here. And then you've got the schools on the opposite side of the road.
So they would use a pedestrian footway to go through to cross the road.
They
wouldn't
yeah.
need to go on any roads other than crossing Main Ashenden.
They'd have to cross Ashenden
Yeah,
Road,
other than
but
that.
no, they wouldn't need to cross any road within the site because this is just an emergency vehicle access only. There'll be bollards on it. Yeah. So loss of parking spaces. I think that was a question. Is there a loss? So I don't have a number of parking spaces across the whole site as a whole, but as a result of slight changes to the dwelling mix, there might be slight changes, because if you have like 1-bed properties required by your standard to have one space, 2-bed plus required to have 2. In some cases on the site layout, some of the dwellings have 3 because they have a garage space as well, but because the garage isn't quite the depth that the adopted parking standard requires in order for it to be counted as a space, we haven't counted them. Could still function as a parking space. Some people have smaller cars fit in their garage, no problem, but we have discounted those. So they're in addition, if you like. But the number of dwellings that are proposed, to the mix proposed, so the number of 1, 2, 3, meets your parking standard in terms of the number of spaces that need to be provided per dwelling.
And that's including visitor spaces as well.
In terms of visitor spaces, bear with me.
All right, so it's okay. It's on there.
Sorry, I've just given it, it's on 6.42, I think.
Great. 6.4, page 6.42.
Yes, 2.104.
So
They're still the same, are they?
not exactly the same number of visitor spaces as was approved, but still policy compliant.
Okay, thank you.
And then your last point, have I lost that sheet? Oh, the boundary gap outside of the site, is it constant? So the buffer, the green buffer, I think that's what you're referring to.
I think clarification is the minimum distance, but constant.
I might just need clarification in what you mean by the green buffer, because in lots of areas, the proposed rear garden boundary, so let's just zoom into this area of the site up here in the northwest. So in this area, for instance, bordering existing, you have the garden boundary. There's no green buffer as such. It's the rear garden boundary, and then you've got the dividing fence or boundary treatment, and then the garden area to the property to the north. So it's not a consistent green buffer around the entire site.
Maybe for clarification, maybe what I mean is back garden fences, will there be a gap between them? Will they be putting another fence, not sharing the one that's already there?
I'm being told that there'll be new fencing around the whole site. So there may well be an existing boundary treatment, or it may be that there's no boundary treatment, in which case the new fence that forms the boundary on the site will be the only hard boundary. But if there's already a fence there, there'll be two fences abutting each other, I guess. But there is no green buffer strip between those two fences proposed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got 3 questions. I welcome that there's extra trees on the proposed layout to the original, but could I ask a question about on page 6.4, conditions 8, which relates to nesting birds, and condition 9, which relates to tree protection of trees that are in the tree and building parameter plan. And the question is, have any hedges or trees that are in that plan been removed? My second question is, I couldn't find in the report, we've changed the layout of the green space, but how does that affect the overall area of the green space? And my third question is that from the drawing, it appears to indicate that there are fewer trees acting as a screen on the northern boundary. And I'd just like clarification if that's correct. Thank you.
So the first question relating to the condition, that condition requires that, I can't remember which condition it was, if one of you got it, thank you. 8, sorry. So existing in hedgerows and trees indicated to remain on the trees and hedgerows and building parameter plan, and there's a reference, shall remain, not be felled or removed. So as far as I understand it, I'm not actively investigating any complaints in relation to the breach of that condition, or I don't think our enforcement team are. So again, I suppose if there is any concern that that hasn't been adhered to, we could, as a council's enforcement team, look at that, but it wouldn't be sort of important to decision making before you tonight, because it relates to a condition, and there's no amendment proposed to that condition. It would be carried over and still apply. In relation to the overall area of green space, now I'm afraid I don't have a paragraph reference, but I do know that in the report there is reference to the strategic green spaces throughout the site and how that changes maybe, I don't know if colleagues can find that for me, rather than me sort of flick through. But what I can say in relation to this part, which is the part which is changing mostly, because actually very little is changing in relation to the east-west ditch or the Eastern Parkland strategic green space. So approximately this whole area is increasing by about 0.1 of a hectare. So it's not a huge difference. I mean, it's certainly not a decrease overall. Yeah. That's, oh, sorry, that was that one. And I think that you might have had another point. Sorry, so fewer trees. So let me, actually, we could stay on, actually, I might just take you to that comparison plan again. Oh, not that one, this one. So I think when you say fewer trees on the northern boundary, I think this is the area, yeah, because the northern boundary is much wider than that, but a majority of that, it's rear gardens, immediately adjacent rear gardens, whereas here we've got some strategic space. This was the approved arrangement, and this is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and if you count that little one, I don't know if you would, 6, and then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they're slightly differently positioned, but you still have trees there, as you did have on the approved scheme, forming over time, I appreciate, a buffer or some sort of screening, natural screening between the existing and proposed development. These buff-coloured trees are feature trees. And on the landscape master plan that's been submitted, there are particular species that are identified for feature trees, okay? But these other trees, whether they are this dark green colour and that size indicated, or the lighter green colour to the smaller size, the landscape master plan indicates the same mix of species. So when we come to discharge the conditions that relate to the detailed planting scheme for this area of the site, there is nothing to say that actually all of these trees couldn't be the same species, yeah, or as it could have been here. Okay, so they are slightly differently positioned, but we're comfortable, and we would work with the council's arboricultural officer to make sure the right trees are planted in the right place. Okay, at the discharge of condition phase, but we're comfortable that they still be tree lined. Okay, sorry. Go back. My colleague has found the reference in the committee report to the green space in the central northern area, and that actually, apologies, I'd said 0.1. This is referencing 0.24 hectares difference, so that might have taken into account changes to the whole as well, but there's certainly no decrease across the site.
Okay, members, no more questions? Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of items where we have a policy of basically peppering the site with affordable homes, and they seem to be accumulated in areas or being moved to those areas, which I find difficult to take in on the basis that we've already been down this road of putting groups of affordable homes together, and where we found a difficulty there. In the original proposed plan, and if you'd like to put that one up there, we've got garages in the, I think it's north, in the corner there where they've changed the road layout. There are garages in that area from those homes. And so we're losing those garages for another home, basically. And I find that difficult to put in contrast to what is proposed at the moment. There doesn't seem to be a dividing line where, or there is a dividing line on the proposed where you've got affordable homes and not spread out a little bit in the way of non-affordable homes. The other thing that particularly worries me, the attenuation pond. That is, where is all that water going to go when it fills up? And what will be the outcome to those properties on that surrounding corner? And I think my last comment is to do with the road layout itself, but that's already been discussed at a previous councillor. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Katie, yes, please.
So in relation to the affordable homes, the council's policy refers to the fact that they should be spread across the site. And then Councillor Stanley is correct that in brackets then that after spread, it contains the word pepper potting. But there's no sort of hard and fast definition of such. The NPPF design guide talks about well integrated homes throughout a site. It talks about a mix of properties. So yes, on this site, we've got affordable and we've got a range of 1, 2, 3 bed. The affordable, although they're all shown with red dots at the moment on the plan, there will be a mix of both affordable rented properties and affordable shared ownership properties. So there is also that mix as well, which is not shown highlighted on this particular plan that just indicates all with red dots. And the changes, I do have a plan, maybe I'll show you that. It is not a plan that's been submitted for approval, but it is a plan that we have just for our own sort of consideration of the scheme in relation to looking at the spread, if you like. And let me just explain this for clarity. So this is not a plan for approval, and these yellow dots sometimes are over whole blocks of flats. Okay, so they don't indicate number, so don't count them and then, you know, compare the number of yellow dots. What these plans are intended to do is give you a sort of visual indication of the spread of affordable across the site, from proposed on the right hand side to approved on the left hand side. And the greyed out area in the slightly kind of lighter coloured yellow dots within that greyed out area are phase 1 affordable, and although they're not shown on this approved scheme, they're exactly the same. Okay, so when you're looking at that, don't think that there's more affordable than approved. There isn't. There is that these are equally should be shown on here. Okay, so keep that in mind. In relation to then the proposed in phase 2, okay, so you still have these two individual, not individual plots, because I think they relate to a flatted block here and a maisonette block here, but they're exactly the same, no change. Again, these two here are these two here, no change. What we regard this as like a cluster. And we would say that this is still a cluster in the same general location. So yes, there is a tweak to the positioning. So this semi-detached here that was approved now flips over to here. But what you still got in this street is a mix of affordable properties and open market properties on the same side of the street, but also opposite the street as well. And then on this southern boundary, you had a row of affordable. I think they were semi-detached, but that might not all be. And then you had one detached open market house on the end. That's changed slightly, and the open market house is now here. But again, you've got a street which is mixed, and we say well integrated, because you've got affordable on one side, but straight opposite some market housing here. And then in the phase 3 area, again, these two here are consistent, so no change. In this area here, essentially, this one here that was approved, this is consistent, these three here, and you've just got a minor change to this area here, which is this area here. This area east of the green space was always this cluster of affordable. So they were 2 flatted blocks and then some rows of terraces, and you've still got the 1 flatted block and the maisonettes surrounding. And then in this northwestern area, there are some changes to the plots, but we still say there's a general mix of open market plus affordable. And so there are differences, but we say it's not material to warrant any concerns that the scheme wouldn't be appropriately well integrated in terms of the different types of housing. And then bear in mind my comment that some of these yellow dots will be properties that are shared ownership properties. That's just a different affordable product. In relation to the attenuation pond, so the surface water that's falling on the residential parcels will all be directed to a piped surface water drainage network, which will outfall to these attenuation basins, which have been appropriately sized. The LLFA are comfortable that they're adequately sized to deal with the number of dwellings that the site serves, and they will outfall off-site to the public water sewer. So there'll be no risk of overtopping of those attenuation basins or anything to result in any kind of increased flood risk to those dwellings surrounding the site, either existing or proposed. And then the garages on the northern, I'm not quite, maybe, I think you might need to direct me if possible to, is it on the approved plan? We're talking about the garages. On the approved, okay, just bear with me a second. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just trying to find.
That's when you had the two of them up together.
Oh, was it on that one? Apologies. This is the phase, this is the full approved site layout. So is it on this one? On the northern? I don't know quite where garages.
On that phase 3, but where the PH is, where the P is, if you go to the left of that, there was 2 garages on the parcel of land with the detached properties.
Okay. Yep, that's right. Let me just zoom in a little bit to this area. Are we talking about this site? This?
No, not that.
No, further over?
To the left.
Okay, west.
Yeah.
Over here. Let's zoom in a little bit.
Then they have been taken out.
So this is the approved layout. Can we pinpoint where? So these are garages. So there's a garage here. There's garages here that would serve these detached properties. And that's a garage at the back. So all the garages are sort of sited rearward.
On the proposed one,
This is proposed. Oh, sorry, this is approved, yeah. And on the, yeah. So on this proposed layout, this part of the site is proposed to change. There are still some detached dwellings that will have garages. These are not garages, these are just parking bays. These are just 2 parking bays side by side, if you like. But some of the properties still feature garages. These ones here, set back into the rear garden. Yeah. I think that was all.
Councillor Stanley, wish to come back?
Can I just come back with the flats? Obviously, would be. I would have thought that there'd be 1 bed, 2 bed, and affordable flat top roofs on those flats in the far corner on that crescent right in the centre there. There's no change on that at all. But my point is that opposite, you've got affordable homes just the same. And to the right of that, you've got another row of affordable. You know, there's no breakup as to what we had imagined there would be in the way of breaking up those properties where you've got blocks of 4. You've got 2 blocks of floor. If you was to separate those and put something in the middle of those, that would then give a little bit more of a spread to those affordable homes and to, in other words, integrated into the master plan. That's what I'm saying.
Chairman, you've already made this point. You've already been asked and answered.
Yeah, I think that has been answered. If I'm right, can you confirm?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to say, is this area here that you're concerned about, Councillor Stanley, this area here? Because this area here, although we have a different layout and different. There's still this flatted block here, but this was another flatted block, and then we had some terraces, but this area was all affordable on the approved scheme and continues to be. So yes, it's a different layout of houses, but similar. Yeah.
Okay, members, any more questions? No? Okay. The recommendation is to approve the application subject to conditions and heads of terms set out on pages 6.1 to 6.2 of the 2.1 of the report, and the revised conditions set out on pages 1 and 2 of the addendum. I'm going to propose that from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Rafferty, thank you. Those in favour, please indicate. Okay, hands down, thank you. Those against, please indicate. And any abstentions? Thank you. That application is approved. Thank you, members. Moving on to agenda item 7. Number 14, Ashington Heights. Claire Buckley will present the officer report. Thank you.
Chairman, this application is for a single-storey extension to an existing detached garage to form a sunroom and to use the remaining garage for storage. It is before members for consideration as the applicant is a member of staff at Rochford District Council. As you can see from the location plan, the area outlined in red, I'm just going over it as well, just to identify it. The site is located within the residential area of Rochford, surrounded by dwellings. And plan 2, please, Katie. Thank you. Thanks. The site comprises a detached dwelling house, an adjacent pitched roof detached garage which sits back from the highway and is located on the boundary with number 12. So this is the existing arrangement here. So you've got the dwelling here and then the detached garage located there, set back from the front there. So it's got a driveway area to the front. The proposal seeks an extension to the existing garage with a pitched roof to a height of some 3.8 metres, projecting towards the rear of the site. The extension would form a sunroom, with the existing garage element being used for storage. The extension would follow the existing boundary line, retaining a slight separation to the boundary of approximately 0.2 metres. The width proposed is some 2.8 metres, with the roof featuring 2 roof lights facing south and a set of bifolding doors to the southern elevation as its fenestration. The garage door to the existing garage would remain. So just to identify here, so existing garage, so it would extend to the rear there like that to form a sunroom. You can see on this here, there, that's where the roof lights would be located, facing inwards towards their garden area, along with some bifolding doors. And you can see here the proximity to the neighbour here. So the key material planning considerations are impact on the character of the area, residential amenity, garden size, parking, ecology and trees. So looking at impact on the character of the area, the proposal is considered to positively contribute to the existing dwelling by way of external finishes and is of appropriate scale, mass and design, and would not give rise to a detrimental impact on the character of the application site, nor would it be detrimental to the appearance of the street scene. With residential amenity, the nearest neighbour is located at number 12. It is not considered that the proposed extension would be any more imposing than the relationship with an existing garage at number 12 has to the west. So that's in reference to there's an existing garage sort of located here. So the rear boundary of number 12 is along here and they already have a garage in a neighbouring plot located to the rear here. It is not considered that the proposal will be detrimental to the residential amenity of any other neighbouring properties. Garden size, sufficient garden area would remain with the proposal in place in accordance with our supplementary guidance. Looking at parking, the original 1997 application at this site had a planning condition imposed that required the garage to be retained for the parking of vehicles only. However, the existing garage does not comply with the current length of garage space required within the parking standards guidance and is therefore not considered to form a usable parking space for consideration. The existing driveway area provides suitable parking at the site and is considered acceptable. So you can see just in the top right hand corner here, this is where the driveway spaces are located here and they're considered acceptable. Ecology and trees. The bat survey declaration form submitted indicates that there is not likely to be harm to bats or their habitat as a result of the proposed works. Only minor trees and hedges within the garden area would require removal. This application is recommended for approval, Chairman, subject to the conditions outlined in the officer's report.
Thank you, Claire. Members, questions? Councillor Myers.
Yeah, good evening. I noticed the report that the reason it's here is because the actual application is for a member of Rochford District Council. The question is, if it was a member of the public that applied for this, would it have already received planning permission? And because I noticed there's no objections from any parish councils or any of the neighbours, so my suggestion would be put it straight to a vote, because we've all had a chance to read the papers, and if it was a member of the public, it had already been granted.
I'll second that, Chairman.
Hang on a minute, Councillor Foster would like to speak, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just a quick point, really. It's a question. I understand that it's out of scope of the planning department, but the items that are raised on page 7.6, items 3.1 and 3.2, is there any way it can be ensured that these matters are addressed outside of the planning?
Claire.
Sorry, which were the paragraph numbers again, please? Sorry.
Looking at page 7.6, paras 3.1 and 3.2. It raises some issues which are out of scope in terms of this, but probably for the neighbours need to be addressed. Is there any way they can ensure they're addressed?
They couldn't be addressed as part of the planning application
Understand
process.
that.
They would be private matters they'd have to address between independent parties themselves. And in answer to the other query, I think that was raised, yes, if it was a member of the public that wasn't a member of staff at Rochford, if they had submitted this application, we would have proceeded with our delegation as officers to issue an approval for this application.
Councillor Stanley, are you indicating?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Chairman. One thing that does, looking at the plans and what have you, can we put any condition on the tree planting? I notice there is only now one tree that's on that scale. I don't know if we can put a condition of putting the tree back. Maybe not.
I think with this scale of application, it would be, it wouldn't be a reasonable
I do love
condition to
my
impose
nature.
as part of this application. Although obviously it is justified on quite large scale development schemes. For this level of scheme, we're not losing a substantial tree in any way. It's only modest things in the rear garden.
Okay, thank you. No more questions? Okay, the recommendation is to approve the application subject to conditions set out on pages 7.1 to 7.2 of the report. I note that Councillor Myers has proposed this. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lorman, thank you. All those in favour, please indicate. That is unanimous. Thank you very much, members. And at 42 minutes past 8, the meeting is closed. Thank you very much for your attendance and for your participation. Can I also say a special thank you to our officers, who I think have done a sterling job tonight. Thank you.